Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission shows that crude oil production, including condensates, averaged 1.66 million barrels per day in the month of May, 1.5% month-on-month decline from the 1.6 million barrels per day in April. Meanwhile, oil prices eased today as markets weighed the chance of supply disruptions from the Israel-Iran conflict. Oyeyemi Oke, a partner at AO2 Law, joins me now as we look into the conversations. Thank you so much for your time, Oyeyemi. And let's first start with that decline we're seeing in month-on-month production here from Nigeria. And what would you say are some of the key drivers?
Month-on-month decline, right? If you do a good analysis of it, in terms of the decline from a numbers perspective, the decline which we have when we do April to May comparison, the decline we have is just about circa 25,000 barrels, which is not fatal. If you look at the performance between March and May, in March we had 1.603 million in terms of daily production, which has been the lowest this year. If you compare that to 1.68, which we had in April, and now we have 1.66. To my mind, I don't think it is significant in terms of the decline, and I don't think there's a cause for worry. Now, what may be the driver? Perhaps you may have operational inefficiencies here and there. You can also have perhaps maybe instances of maybe crude theft or what have you. But again, I will look at this holistically, right? I don't think the numbers are quite fatal. Now, if you look at what we have in terms of our official quota for crude oil production from OPEC, right, we're at about 97% in terms of the numbers, at least from the numbers coming from the Upstream Commission. We are supposed to be pumping out 1.5 million barrels per day oil, excluding condensates.
All right,
okay,
continue. When you're done, I'll chip in my question.
Yeah, and averagely we're doing about 1.45 million. So that accounts for about 97% in terms of our production, which is really in itself not a bad thing. But again, if Nigeria has the aspiration to increase the level of production to 2 million barrels, then there's still more that needs to be done.
Definitely more to be done if we're going to move to that 2 million barrels mark. But let's look at what the external development will bring to the table here, talking about the geopolitics and what we're seeing play out in Israel and Iran and the likely impact across the spread here, talking about prices on one hand and even demand and supply dynamics.
Well, if you notice, when the first airstrikes came from Israel to on Iran, we had a significant jump in crude oil prices as high as 13%. And you will note that the basis for this is just the market reacting, being jittery with regards to whether there will be supply disruptions. The prices have eased a bit, at least based on the reports that we have. This does not mean that pricing may not go beyond the pricing which we have now if these strikes are sustained. But for now, considering that oil is still flowing, we had a bit of a scare yesterday in terms of the oil collision on the Strait of Hormuz. But at least it's now sure that that had nothing to do with the hostilities going on between Israel and Iran. So pricing as at now continues to ease, provided that there are no supply disruptions. If there are supply disruptions, perhaps the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, then we may be having issues around pricing. But Iran wants oil to flow, obviously for reasons you and I know, because of revenues. The United States also wants pricing not to be escalated. So I don't think we may see a closure of that strait for now. But if we have sustained strikes, perhaps on Iranian oil facility, definitely it would affect supply, and the natural thing will be that pricing will go up.
Yeah, but would you say that the $74 band is the new normal now, or do you think that it's just probably going to go back to the 60s range?
Well, my view is that we may have the 74 ban for a while. I mean, depending on the nature, I mean, on the grade of crude, pricing is between 73 to 75. If the hostilities don't cease, it may go up, but we may have a situation where if we have supplies continuing in the market without any form of disruption, perhaps we may now see a downward trend in terms of pricing. But this may not necessarily be good for Nigeria, considering that Nigeria has pegged its budgetary benchmark of oil at $75 per barrel. However, let's be mindful that if this happens, or if we see sustained increase in pricing, then we may be looking at issues around also increase in the downstream products, which will affect you and I as a common man.
And then let's get to back to developments here in Nigeria and what we see play out with the Dangote Petroleum Refinery and their plans to distribute PMS nationwide. I'd like you to speak to the wider implications, especially for first across the value chains and all the key stakeholders involved in that space.
Well, to my mind, I think the development is good, and it's good because you have a penetration issue or a distribution issue. What Dangote is doing is, I would rather say perhaps, is forward integration in terms of not only producing the refined products, but ensuring that there's appropriate distribution channel and appropriate distribution network to ensure that there's penetration of products. Now, we've seen arguments to say this action will foster monopoly or would encourage monopolistic tendency from the refined producer. But the question is, in the real sense, right? The producer has to push its product in the market, whether it now decides to use third-party haulage companies or try to use independent marketers, or try to actually forward integrate by penetrating the market through its own distribution channel, right? It's left up to it. I don't see any reason why you can't have a producer decide to take on distribution. The only point which for me that has to be considered is with this distribution network or this distribution formality or model, will it ultimately reduce pricing? Because at the end of the day, a competitive market is what we want. If it would reduce pricing and improve efficiency, then I think it's a welcome idea. Also, it's a way to put all the independent marketers, in my view, on their toes to ensure that there's sufficient penetration of products within the Nigerian market.
Yeah, but there's also a CNG play in here, and I'd love you to speak to the significance of having a player the likes of Dangote coming to that space, and also looking at the drive that the government has had in the CNG space over time. You know, what would you say in terms of the uptick we've seen in terms of investment coming into that space?
I think we've seen increased investment in that place. In that space. All the trucks that are going to be used, as I understand it, are going to be CNG trucks. And apart from that, there will be CNG hubs that will be built by Dangote, again, based on my understanding. And what this does is that it increases penetration of CNG into the market. If you know, or if you're aware of the CNG market in terms of distribution, one of the biggest challenge is availability of CNG, or what I would call how common you would get, or you come by CNG for haulage or for transportation businesses. Now, if you have a situation where there is a market player that is saying we would create hubs as a result of the fact that we are using CNG for our trucks. So what it means is that you will have even more trucks that are not necessarily used by Dangote using CNG, and it would improve penetration and usage of CNG. In my view, I think it's a good development, because what it means is that the presidential initiative for CNG is being taken seriously and implemented, and most likely we would see a situation whereby fuel cost, especially for haulage and transportation companies, reduce significantly.
All right, thank you so much for your time on the show today. Oyeyemi Oke, a partner at AO2 Law